Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the TCG Empire YouTube channel. Today we are taking a look at some cards for Tech Tuesday that you can possibly run in order to beat OP03 Whitebeard. Now, OP03 Whitebeard isn't a top tier deck, I want to say, anymore. Not that it's not good, it just, with the ban of Moby Dick, it really hinders its performance because it has a hard time being as aggro as it was. So we're going to just go over some cards that I think really could be beneficial to play within your list in order to possibly, beat the matchup when it comes to Whitebeard if you're having a tough time. Because Whitebeard having 6k power as a leader and 6 life, even though it takes, its own life, and they have 1,000,001 2k counters, it's still somewhat difficult. So the first card that we have is Isho. Now, Isho is good because during your turn, all of your opponent's characters get -3 to their cost. But also the on play is great, where if your opponent has 6 or more cards in their hand, they have to trash 2. And it's really strong because Whitebeard tends to rely on going to almost no life, one life to 0 life, and then having a big hand. So forcing them to get rid of cards is great. Not to mention the Isho is a 9k attacker for 8 Dawn. So you can actually attack with this, and just for 1 Dawn investment, when it comes to Whitebeard, they have to waste an event card and also a counter in order to get out of the attack, or they have to drop at least 3 cards out of their hand that they already discarded 2 from in order to get through it. Next we have, I believe his name is Fukuro. We're just going to say Fukuro. He has blocker, which is nice, and also he can't be KO'd by character effects, which means that he can't be KO'd by the Marco, the 5-drop one. So it's very nice, and he's just a blocker, which means that, you can block some of the incoming attacks that might come through. Next, we do have Bluano. For a Dawn ×1, this card gains blocker. It's really in here just because it is a good blocker, plus it has a 6,000 base, and it's nice because it means that technically, in theory, you have a 6,000 beater that can just hit into the number of Whitebeard, and it's just super solid. Everything with Whitebeard, you really want to try to hit 6,000 plus, so they have to dump cards. Next, for the black events, we do have Tempest Kick Sky Slicer. KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 0, or KO up to one of your opponent's stages with a cost of 3 or less. The only reason it's in here is because with them playing the 4-drop blocker Marco, you can potentially put it down to 0 and then KO it. If you had something like a Smoker Leader paired with an Isho, then you can use the Tempest Kick Sky Slicer. And then also, it does have a good trigger of being able to draw 2 cards, which could put you back at a good hand size in order to block incoming attacks. Next, we do have 6 King Pistol. You can trash a card from your hand up to one of your leaders or characters gain plus 3,000 power during the battle. And then the trigger is also draw 1 card, then KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 1 or less. So it's really solid. It's just a free event that you can play. If you don't have Dawn open for some reason and you have some extra cards that you want to get rid of, you can put yourself up to 8k on a 5k leader, and it means that they have to invest more Dawn. Next, we do have the Carney blocker. This is only in here because it is the new blue blocker, and with Nami as a deck, most of the time you'll have 20 or less cards in your deck, and then it's a 6,000 blocker. So you could potentially save it, but most of the time it's just going to be used as a one-time block. Next, we have 3,000 Worlds. The main, place up to 1 character with a cost of 5 or less at the bottom of the owner's deck. This is good because then you can bottom deck Marcos, that way they don't see him again. Or you can bottom deck the Marco blocker, that way you don't have to worry about blocks that are incoming. Next, we have Jin for green. This is good just because when you play it, if your character leader is East Blue type, you rest up to 2 of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4 or less. This means that you can rest the blocker. You can rest the blocker Marcos, and if they have a small hand size, you pay 4 Dawn, then you have 6 to work with. You can do an 11k swing on the leader for lethal after resting 2 of their blockers. So overall, really good. Then we have Craig, just a 7,000 attacker, but it also says you may trash 1 card from your hand, KO up to 2 of your opponent's rested characters with a cost of 4 or less. So you can actually pair this with Jin, and it means that you can potentially KO both of the Marcos. Now they can bring the Marcos back, but if they want to do that, they have to dump cards from their hand. So overall, it's really good. Plus, it has double attack, so a 8k double attack, most of the time, when it comes to Whitebeard, they want to take life on their own terms, so a double attack they'll tend to try and block out of, and so that's good to just burn the resources early. And then we have Pearl, which is a blocker, just a solid blocker. Because Whitebeard has so many attackers that are big, you kind of want to play as many blockers as you can. Next, for purple, we have the Chimney and Gnome blocker. Again, you just want to play a lot of blockers if you can. Then we have Polly. On play, you pay 2 Dawn, and you add 1 Dawn card from your Dawn deck and set it as active. And then if you have 8 or more Dawn in play, you can KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4 or less. So you can use this to KO the Blocko Marco and possibly go for game, because you spend 5 for this, and then you spend 5, you pay 2, and then you add 1, so you go from, you know, having 7 Dawn spent with 3 open on a 10 curve to spending 6 in theory. And so overall you can get a good swing in. It's not as good as things like the Jin, but for purple it's something that's pretty solid. And then we have Rob, Lucy, which is Dawn -1, return up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less. It's good because you can rest it, which means you can rest things like the blocker Marco. You really just want to get through their defenses and make them mill their own hand. And then for red, we have, I believe his name's Fusa. It's just another blocker. Again, you just want to use as many blockers as you can. Then we have Lim, which is another blocker, but on your opponent's turn, if it's KO'd, you can give -2,000 power to one of your opponent's leaders or characters. This is the difference between surviving a turn or not. If they've spent all of their Dawn and then they kill the Lim, you can actually give, you know, an ace down to 5,000 power, or you can make the leader 4,000, which means that they can't swing on you or they have to invest more Dawn. It just makes Dawn placement a little bit trickier for them. Then for ace specifically, we have Flame Emperor, where it says if your opponent is ace, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with 8,000 power or less, and then the leader gains double attack plus 3,000 damage. So this is really good because not only does it have a jet pistol trigger, but it's good in the sense that you can actually buff yourself pretty well, especially with Ace's ability, so you can have a big lethal here. Then we also have Fiery Doll. Your leader gains 4,000 power for the turn. It also has a good trigger. Give up to one of your opponent's leaders or characters -10,000. This means that you can survive a lethal potentially. And then we have Charlie for purple. I mean, not purple, for yellow. We have Charlie. On play, you look at the top card of your opponent's life and place it at the bottom if you want to. This is just good because then you can control what cards are going to go into the hand of the Whitebeard player. So overall, it's pretty solid, and it's a blocker. Then we have the Charlotte Galette, just another blocker that's really solid. And then we actually have the 10-drop Charlotte Lin. This is just good because as a big body and being 12,000 power, it means that they have to dump at least 4 cards in order to block it if they're just using all counter power and no events. And then they have to drop at least 2 events plus another card if they want to try and counter out of it. So correction, actually, they only need to drop 2 events, but this big swing can get through. But also Whitebeard tends to be at a spot where they'll play the big 9-drop Whitebeard and they'll have 1 life left and you can't really get through those defenses, so the Charlotte lets you just play it, and then they have to choose to either rip one of their own lives or add one to yours. And if they're adding life to yours, it means that you're in a better position, or if they're ripping one, it means that they're in an awkward spot, which means that their, you know, Dawn and stuff might change the next turn, and you can possibly go for lethal off that. Then for the events, we do have these Sovereignty, Ikaku Sovereignty. Counter up to one of your leaders or characters gains plus 5,000. This is really solid because if they swing for, say, 8k, you can actually block it, which is really nice. And then the trigger, you can discard 2 cards from your hand and add a card from the top of your life from your deck to the top of your life. It's really solid just because it kind of adds to the sense of you being ahead on life compared to Whitebeard. So then we have Thunderbolt. You can trash one card from the top of your life area and KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less. This is really good just in the sense that, you know, you can actually kind of go for game there if they have a small hand size and Marco blockers on the board. And then the trigger is to KO one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less. So the Marco blocker and some other things that they might play, or some big body threats. So overall, these are some cards that you can actually play in order to, you know, try and swing the Whitebeard matchup. Whitebeard is a weird deck. I think it just kind of falls short with the Moby Dick being banned now, but overall, this is what I kind of think you guys can adjust to. Again, some of these might be normal, some of these might not be, but test the counts, see if you need to go up or down, but definitely give these a try if you're struggling against Whitebeard. But overall, thank you so much for watching today's video. If you did enjoy it, smash that like button, subscribe, turn on post notifications, and I'll catch you guys in tomorrow's What to Buy Wednesday.